Hey, y'all, I'm Shane Sams. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast today. Super excited to be bringing you another amazing, successful expert, author, entrepreneur, people who are doing amazing things out in the world. I want to give you access to those people that I know so that you can learn from them and you can take your life to the next level as well. Really pumped about my guest today. It's a guy I look up to a lot. His name is Brian Moran, and he is the author of The 12-Week Year. Now, I don't know if you have read The 12-Week Year, but you need to stop what. Well, no, wait. Listen to the podcast first, then stop what you're doing, and you need to get on Amazon. You need to order a copy of this book. It's probably one of the most powerful organizational tools that we have ever discovered for our business, and it is being used by many, many businesses out there to get more done in 12 weeks than most people get done in a year. A good friend of ours introduced us to Brian Moran and his concept of the 12-week year, where basically instead of setting year-long goals, you set 12-week goals. Now, we ain't talking quarterly here, people. We're not setting quarterly goals. This is literally 1 week equals 1 month, 12 weeks equals a year. And going in and setting tactical objectives, executing those objectives at a high level, and reaching your goals in a fourth of the time. It's a simple concept, but man, Brian spells it out amazingly in his book, The 12-Week Year. We've been doing this now for a while, and I have really looked forward about this because I want to introduce you to Brian Moran. I want to introduce you to 12-Week Year. Whatever your goals are in business, heck, whatever your goals are really in life, you can use this amazing concept to get there faster. That's what we all want, right? Faster success. So on today's podcast, we are going to talk to Brian about why people struggle to stick to a plan. Have you ever struggled to stick to a plan out there? Well, you're going to learn how to stick to the plan today. We're going to talk about how to set up your 12-week year so that you can succeed. We made a lot of mistakes the first time we tried to implement this program. So we're going to talk about some of those struggles and challenges today on the podcast. We're going to talk about how you can use the 12-week year to achieve your long-term vision. And we're also going to talk about the role of accountability in execution. This is a fun conversation, man. We're going to get in the weeds today with Brian Moran, author of The 12-Week Year. I know you're going to get a lot of benefit out of today's show. So wherever you are listening, grab yourself a cup of coffee or a mason jar of sweet tea. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, 3, 2, 1. Brian Moran, what's happening, man?
Shane, how are you, buddy?
I've been looking forward to this one all day long because I love it when I get to hang out and talk to somebody when we use their stuff, because we are 12-week year fans over here at the Flip Lifestyle Universe, man. Yeah, I read it a couple years ago, but I kind of put it to the side because I was like, man, I'm not that organized. I can't do this. And then as I started hiring people, I was like, dang, I have to do this to get my team on the same page. And that's when we kind of got into it, started activating it. And man, it's just like, it's a game changer when you actually do it. You know what I'm saying?
Funny how that is, huh?
Right, exactly. Yeah, man.
Like so many things in life, right?
Yeah, man. You find the secret sauce and then you forget to put the sauce on the noodles. That's pretty much the story of my life. Why do you think that is, man? Why do you think so many people struggle to stick with a plan, especially a plan like yours that's clearly worked for businesses small and large and multiple places? Why do so many people struggle with sticking to a plan like the 12-week year?
It's just a heavy lifting it takes to be successful, right? Anything worthwhile in life takes effort. And so people will put it in for a short period of time. And if the results aren't almost instantaneous, then they give up. And so much of success is just staying with it, staying in the game, not worrying if you're stumbling along, just moving forward. And I think too many people just bail too early, looking for something that's going to be easier. And so they chase these new ideas and they chase these new things, and they probably work if you apply them, but it's the application of them that really matters. The 12-week year is all about execution because, just Shane, as you know, having great ideas doesn't move the needle.
That's right.
But you've got to be willing to do the work.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I remember the first 12 weeks that we did it. It was interesting because we almost started and stopped at first because we kind of I don't know if we packed too much into it. It was like we packed too much into it, and at the same time, we didn't give enough leadership and instruction to our people. So we kind of rebooted it a couple weeks in and then got it right. It took us a start and a stop and a fit before we could actually figure it out for us. You know what I mean? Because it's such a different concept. 1 week is a month. 12 is it's crazy when you start looking at it that way. And then all of a sudden you look up and you're getting things done in a week that you wouldn't have got done in a month before, And it's like when you shorten the time frames, everything happens faster.
Yeah. And so initially what happened for you is because you're used to doing stuff annually, annual goals, annual plans, you try and cram all that into 12 weeks. And that's not what it's about. It's not about taking everything you do in 12 months and cramming it into 12 weeks.
Oh, I tried, bro.
Yeah, everyone does.
I tried.
Everyone does.
Yeah, man.
But that's not what's going to create the success anyways. It's about things that really matter and being consistent with those.
Incredible. Well, so what were you doing before 12-week year? Like what led you to this? I mean, this thing has become it is a brand in and of itself, the 12-week year, right? Like what were you doing before this? And how did you even get to the place where you were going to write the book in the first place?
Yeah, I was living in a van down by the river. I don't know if you know that video.
I know exactly that video. I watch it once a month to make me feel better.
Motivational speaker. Yeah, so my background was corporate America. I came up, paid my way through college at UPS. They promoted me into management, switched my degree, moved to Southern California, got in with PepsiCo, joined a consulting firm, got an offer to be vice president of a $1 billion company, and then decided to strike out on my own. And when I initially did that, I was investing in a local startup and they needed someone to run it. So I ran it, put everything together, but it really wasn't what I wanted to do. I love coaching. I love training. I love teaching. And so, really started consulting on my own. And along the way, as we figured out, what's the value we're going to bring to the marketplace, it was clear to us that they didn't need new ideas. They didn't need new techniques, new systems they needed to implement. And so started working with what drives execution, what drives implementation. And then we came across periodization, the athletic training process that we adapted. And that's where the 12-week year was born. And it was really the accelerant to the disciplines. But we only wrote the book because we were headed to a conference. We were going to be a vendor at this conference and kind of thinking about what stuff are we going to hand out. And I'd been thinking about writing a book. Talked to ghost authors, really didn't like that process. So I said to Michael, my business partner, I said, let's just do a short format. Let's get out all the fluff. So we wrote the precursor to the 12-week year was called Periodization, 12 Weeks to Breakthrough. We wrote it in 12 weeks, went down to Kinko's and self-published. And,
did you say Kinko's? Are there even Kinko's left anymore? I remember Kinko's.
I don't know, man. I
had to go in college. That's where I printed everything. Was in Kinko's, man. Yeah, man.
Yeah. So we went there and we self-published the thing. And I think we gambled and printed 100 copies, took them to the show, sold them for $10, sold out of them. And from that, we sold 100,000 copies. That book changed our business, changed our life. And then we had a chance Wiley came along and was willing to publish it. And so we had a chance to expand it a bit. But the cool thing was we wrote it in 12 weeks.
Yeah, that's the ultimate. Like you were your own first case study for the 12-week year.
Yeah. But it wasn't, Shane, it wasn't like we had this theory that we sat down to document. We just documented what we were doing with our clients. So, writing it flowed pretty easy and we knew it worked. It wasn't one of those things, gosh, I hope this works. And, can we have an impact with this? We knew that we've been doing it for years. So,
yeah, that's amazing. I coached college football for a while and high school football for almost a decade as a head coach and a defensive coordinator. And that periodization, I never kind of thought about that. It's like we definitely worked in 12-week years. Like we had the January, February, March cycle, which was bulk. You're out of the season. You can afford injuries if you get hurt and you just crush it. And then you go into the conditioning season, which is more like lighter weight and reps, but you're building like more fast twitch muscle fiber. And then it's straight conditioning and then it's maintenance, And that's how you do it. You just work in those 12-week blocks to get the exact perfect result you want right when you want it, which was when the season started, Yeah, man. Yeah. So did you study like sports trainers and stuff?
Yeah. As you know, the concept was born in athletics. We took it. One of our clients was into cycling and said, hey, man, are you familiar with this? And I remember it from training days. And so Michael and I took a look at it and we said, you know what, you can't just take it from sports and apply it in business. We had to make some changes to it, but the fundamentals were the same, right? It was this intense focus in a few key areas, kind of sprint, rest, instead of this long marathon thing. And so that's what we borrowed from it. And that's where, the 12-week year was born, because we were doing what everybody did, right? We helped our clients set annual goals and annual plans, and we broke them to quarterly, monthly, weekly, but they were getting good results. They weren't getting what they were capable of. And it was that annual environment.
Yeah.
That was the bugaboo. And so we came across periodization. The the light bulbs went off and we said, hey, this, we can adapt this to work in a business setting, to work in a personal setting. And so
it's interesting that you, this is something I've always heard about book writing. Like a lot of people are like, don't write the book and sell it because you won't get a book deal. But like, that's the opposite of what happened with you guys. Like you went out, sold the book, did a bunch of copies, and an actual book company said, hey, let me write that. Let me go ahead and publish that for you. Yeah. That's,
if you're a speaker, publishers love speakers because when you go speak, people buy books. So if you got anyone in your group that's thinking about doing that, and you want to sell books and you want to get it published.
For sure. Yeah. Did you approach the book company, or did they come to you once they saw that it was selling, or did they hear about it, or what happened?
A good friend of mine was getting published with Wiley, and so he introduced us to his editor.
Gotcha. Let's talk about the 12-week year itself, like from a high level real quick. Just if anyone's not familiar with the book, like tell me about the 12-week year. Tell me what I should have done instead of try to fit an entire year in there. And like give me a big basic overview of what 12 weeks to a year actually looks like. Like is each week a month? I know we say that, but like how do you actually plan for that? And then what's the best way to actually take that concept and deploy it out into your business or your team?
First off, everything we do is designed to help you execute. Because as I said earlier, it's not enough to know. I mean, you can be smart, you have great ideas, you can be connected, have all kinds of resources. The marketplace only rewards what gets implemented. Same in your personal life. And so everything around the 12-week year is designed to help you execute. That's why we got out of the annual environment, because the annual environment, although having goals and plans, annual goals and annual plans, you'll perform better, there's barriers in it. And the biggest barrier, Shane, is this illusion of lots of time. So it's easy to put things off. And so we created the 12-week year where our clients work in the context of every 12 weeks as a year. And by the way, there aren't 4 of those in a year. That's annualized thinking, right? That's the difference between a 12-week year and a quarter. A quarter is part of a whole. The 12-week year is the whole. And it stands.
I see. So forget that quarterly word even. It's not we're planning 4 quarters. We're literally focusing on this 12-week year right now. And that's it.
Right.
I got you.
Treat it like a year. So there's a hard line in the sand, this point at which we're going to measure our success or failure. And it's a different mindset, which creates a completely different set of actions and rhythm and ultimately different results. You talk about, a week is a month, that kind of stuff, that really is kind of the mindset, right? It's the realization that, look, if we're going to implement, we got to do it now. You can't do it later, right? Because all I have is right now. And so the more consistent I am with that, not perfect, just the more consistent I am with the things that really matter, it doesn't take too much of that before the needle starts to really move.
And then what I found interesting was when we were reading through the book, like it's actually kind of like a 13-week year. It's not, it is 12, but there's that week of celebration and replanning, right? Yeah. And like, that's kind of the cutoff. That's the hard line. But like if there's not quarters and if there's not like, what role does vision or like long-term planning play on this, right? Like if you have this 3-year vision, should you work back into multiple years or should you only focus on the next step to get that one done? Does that make sense? Like what I'm saying?
Yeah. So we start with vision work because it's the foundation of everything, right? It's the why. And so we do it at 2 levels, Shane. We do long-term aspirational, 5, 10 or more years in the future. And then we do 36 months out.
Okay.
And then we align the 12-week year goals with that.
Okay. Now, so you're not really planning all the quarters. You're just setting goals, maybe where you checkpoints almost.
No, we don't do anything quarterly. So we definitely don't plan the quarters. And so what'll happen is when you do that initially, you might have to kind of annualize it to some degree because that's how you've been used to doing it. But over time, what'll happen is you'll determine your 12-week goals more by the trend and what's happened than anything you want to do annually. We look at an annual goal as a 4-year vision.
Oh, I gotcha. So so let's say I do the Vivid Vision thing, the Cameron Herold book. And so it's like 3 years. That's what you're supposed to look at. So 36 months. But at the same time, I could almost apply that to this year. Like I could take that 3-year vision if it's attainable. And I could just say, okay, well, I got 4 years this year to do it. So I just need to now plan my next 12-week year to get me to the next stage, and maybe I could even get my vision. Maybe you plan the long-term vision and then just say, no, now we're going to do this in a year, what we thought we were going to do in 3 or 4. Is that kind of the mentality or?
Not necessarily. It's not necessarily that I'm going to take my 10-year vision and make it happen in 3 years. We have a lot of people that have done that.
Sure.
But the first time out of the gate, especially in your first 12 weeks, I mean, you need to look at what's the best 12 weeks you've ever had. If you're in business, you're setting a business goal, you can create some crazy goal, but if you don't have a foundation for it and you don't have the tailwinds helping you, that's just going to be demoralizing. So, you need to look at, hey, what's the best 12 weeks I've ever had? What do I have working in my favor? What challenges am I facing? What am I willing to do different? And can I build a plan? Because we don't control the outcomes. This is a really important piece. We don't control the goal. That's an outcome. We don't control it. We control the actions. So can I create a plan where I got confidence that if I take these actions, we'll hit that outcome?
Yes, that outcome independent is, I think, my biggest takeaway from the book was being outcome independent. Like, we know, for example, in our business, like we set this goal about a year ago that we were going to build relationships, right? Like, that was going to be one of the ways that we grew the company. And we looked and we said, how do we build relationships? Well, we know that if we record podcasts, people find it. We know that if we record podcasts, we get to hang out with people and talk to and interview people. And if we speak, especially, that gets us more opportunities to either be on podcast or to podcast, right? And we set up everybody's jobs. I think it might have been the third quarter of last year. I know we don't do quarters, but that's when it happened. And we just set it all up to where it was like, okay, let's do this. Let's get the focus, everything on the podcast, forget the outcomes, whatever happens. And I'm telling you, the next 12 weeks, we got overloaded with opportunities. We had podcast guest appearances. I had this guy reach out to me to be a partner in this speaking business. And all these things started happening. Yeah. And it was, we had an outcome in mind, but it was like, the things were like, okay, Shane has to record 3 podcasts a week of his own and 2 guest appearances. Shane has to speak at least once a month. Shane has to do this. Jocelyn's tasks, then my wife, were all to support that. Carrie, our admin assistant, was all to support that. And once we had that vision and everyone was like, these are the 5 things you do every day, and we don't care what happens at the end of the day. We just look back on it. That's when all these opportunities started appearing, because it was so outcome independent. I love that quote you just said too. I just want to highlight this if anybody misses this. What's the best 12 weeks you ever had? Go back and try to replicate that and then look at that. Is that kind of how you should plan your first 12-week year? To look at it that way?
No, but I take it into consideration, right? What would represent a great 12-week year for you from an outcome standpoint? Yeah. So I'm always looking at, well, what's the best I've ever done? Because I'm always striving to get better.
Yeah.
Whether it's with my health, whether it's with my relationships, spiritually, as a parent, whatever, so when I look at the business side, I go, okay, what's the best we've done? What's been the trend the last 3 or 4 or 5 12-week years? What do we see?
Yeah.
And we've had to pivot at times where, we've had a 12-week year and it was re-engineering the business more than it was growing it, so that we could grow it in the future. And so, that's why every 12-week year stands alone. But I'm looking at trends. I'm looking at, what's the best we've ever done. I'm looking at what challenges do we have in the marketplace today that we didn't have, the last couple of 12-week years. And
because it changes every 6 months now, especially after the pandemic.
That's a great reason why annual planning doesn't work.
Yeah.
If you thought annual planning worked, everybody found out last year when COVID hit that it doesn't.
Can you imagine an annual plan from January of 2020 in March of 2020?
Everyone had them, and they blew up. And
Wow.
when people didn't know what to do.
Yeah, man. Have you found too, one modification that we made, and this might just be our preference or something like that, is we actually don't do a week in between 12-week years now. We have a maintenance mode month is what we call it. So we've done let's see, so we're 1, 2, I think we're 4 12-week years in right now or something like that. We actually put a little more time in between it. I also had a challenge of planning during that 1 week, right? And maybe it's just because we're a smaller team or something like that, but I expanded out to a month. The first couple weeks was okay, let's look at the data. Let's see how we actually did. Then the next week was let's talk about what worked and what didn't work. Then I kind of went reclusive and did my vision for the next, 12 weeks or whatever. And then we came back and we're okay, now what does this look like? Because I get stressed out, man, when I'm hyper productive. When I'm we got to grow every 6 weeks. Let's do it. I get stressed out. I needed a little breathing room. Do you find people struggle with that week as bad as we did? Or was that just maybe my preference is what kind of led me to that?
You're just messed up. That's all.
I've been told that many times this morning by my wife.
The thing about the 12-week year is it's flexible. Right. So you can dial it up or dial it down. I mean, if you're pushing too hard and you're cranking too hard, then dial it back.
Yeah.
If you want to take 2 or 3 weeks between 1 year going into the next, take it.
Yeah.
We go off site for 2 days as a team, and we take the morning of day one and we look back. Now we're tracking every week, and because of our WAMs, we're talking about. So it isn't a surprise what happened. So when we do that review, we're going in that room. We all know what happened, but we're discussing what worked, what didn't work, what were we surprised by. Mostly, what are we learning that we can apply in the next 12? And then we'll go through the process of setting our goals and mind mapping them and building out the tactical plan. And it's probably about a day and a half for us is what it ends up being.
Yeah.
But we do that, we do that typically every 13th week. And we take some time off and celebrate. But if you want to put a couple extra weeks in between, no big deal. The system gives you that flexibility.
Are there other challenges you found that people have when they first try to implement the 12-week year besides just cramming a year in, or maybe it's a little too fast paced, so there's a little modification? Are there other challenges or like potholes people need to be on the lookout for when they're going in this from a mindset or an obstacle standpoint?
Yeah, one of the keys is that you get your plans tactical. Most plans are conceptual, and you can't execute concepts. And so, there's a learning curve there in terms of understanding the difference between a goal and a tactic and how granular to get with it. But when you do that, you not only know the magnitude of the work and you know what matters most over the next 12 weeks because it's what's in the plan, but then it leaves a breadcrumb trail, which allows you to make adjustments, smaller adjustments more frequently. And so because people haven't planned tactically, they tend to plan the 12-week year like they've always done, which is conceptual.
Right.
And so it looks like they've got a couple things to do. And so they feel like they can put a lot more in it when those couple things are a couple dozen things. And then they're overwhelmed. By week 3 or 4, they're overwhelmed and they're going, hey, this stuff doesn't work,
Yeah. Or you find out like it's one thing to say like it used to, I would think, I got to get on this stage. I got to go speak at this conference. I got to do that. But there's steps to get on that stage. And if you don't think about them, you can't do them. And like one of the things that we did in the beginning, we were like, okay, well, we know when I do guest appearances on other podcasts, we get a bunch of emails. That just always happens, right? And we want to grow our email list. So we were like, get Shane on 2 podcasts a week, right? Well, that was like the goal. That was what we wrote down. And then we were like 3 weeks in and go, and nothing was happening. And then we started realizing.
So think about that for a minute. That's really not an action, is it? It's an outcome.
No, it's an outcome.
And there's a series of actions to make that outcome happen.
Yes. And the actions were like, we figured out that if we asked 10 people in our network, which was like, we played the Kevin Bacon game, are you within 2 people of us from a podcast we've been on or something, right? Like it was like ask 10 to get on 2 was what we finally came up with. So now it just became each week, are we doing 2 reach outs a day? If we're doing 2 reach outs a day, that should produce 2 opportunities a week for me to go on other people's podcasts. Yeah, that was a game changer.
Yep.
Yeah, it was like more tactical, and it was like, okay, now when the metrics change, so now like instead of as a KPI, there's a person on our team. They have to ask these many people. They have to chart them, right? How it happens. So if we're only getting 1 a week and we're asking 10, we now know that maybe we need to ask 15 instead of 10.
Or you got to get better at how you're asking.
Exactly.
Right? So there's. But something's broke there.
Yes, you can actually see it and you can go fix it and you can get back on track if you mess it up, right? Or the well ran dry. Like you try 3 or 4 things and it's like, okay, well, none of that works now. Maybe that's just maybe now it's more I've got to go to speak at a conference to meet more people because our network kind of dried up for right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Do you apply this to your life? Do you do 12-week years at home? I've always wondered that. Like when I was reading through the business stuff, it's so good,
Yeah. Yeah, we do. Probably not as rigidly as we do them at work.
You mean you don't have KPIs for your kids? Come on, man.
Well, they have some. They have a few.
Right. Yeah.
Right around grades and around athletics.
Yeah.
And their spiritual life, but yeah, it's not as intense. I'm not sure why that is. It's just we found that it fits to a degree for us and works a little different than. But I say that I have and Judy has personal goals as part of our 12-week plan, part of the business plan.
I got you.
So that aspect, I'm thinking more with the kids, it's not quite as formalized.
It's probably impossible. Like I would think it would be, me and Jocelyn have talked about applying it to marriage because marriage is there's a lot of work in marriage. You know what I mean? So like if you could plan it out 12 weeks and be super intentional with what you were doing, but your kids, man, like you don't know what sport they're playing this month.
Yeah. You're freezing up on me.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
We got that Kentucky internet going, man. I had to go tell the squirrels to run faster that were powering the generator out back.
The little hamster on the wheels.
I had the hamster. Yeah, I said, guys, get to work here, man. I'm talking to somebody.
Man.
Last thing I heard was like it can work in family. There's an example in the book or something like that.
Yeah, there's a great example in the book. A client of ours, his son, he helped him use the 12-week year to do better in college, to get better grades. And
that's amazing.
With our daughters, we're into equestrian. They have Arabian horses they show, and so they have goals around how they want to perform, and then they have some actions. We don't overdo it, but just a couple actions around, what they're going to do to train and work at it. And so, and it works really well. I mean, it works incredibly well because what happens, then they're more intentional about it. And when it comes to, hey, do you want to go out and do that or not? It's, well, remember your goal. Anything worthwhile in life takes effort. You're not going to go in and win if you don't put in the hours.
I heard you say on a podcast once too something really interesting. When I was studying the 12-week year, I was really listening to a lot of stuff you were putting out there to kind of get more context and kind of fill in the gaps in the book and things like that in my mind. And one thing you said, someone asked you about quality time with your kids. And you said something fascinating. I told Jocelyn this. You were like, no, man, it's everybody just uses quality time as an excuse. You got to have quantity time too. And I never heard anybody say that, right? And our whole business has been built on 3 o'clock. I'm with my kids. You know what I mean? People are like, if I have an hour with my kid in the afternoon and we're all looking at each other's eyes and saying, I love you, everything's okay. Right? But that's not really how it works. So like, what do you mean by that when you talk about that quantity time versus quality time?
Yeah, the thing about that for me, and this is just for me, I'm not judging others, but I do feel like that whole notion of quality time is an excuse to recreate, right? I spent 10 minutes, quality minutes with my child today. Well, that's okay unless you want to influence them and you want to have some influence in their life, because you won't with 10 minutes a day. And because you're never going to get to what's below the surface. It's hanging out with them for hours when they finally start to share what's on their heart. And when they start to trust you and you get into these great conversations about what's really going on for them and their friends and all of that. And so, one of my goals is to be the number one influence in my kids' life, not their teachers, not their friends, not the TV. In order to do that, I got to spend a lot of time with them. And my wife's the same way. So, that's been my experience. A few minutes here, a few minutes there, you never get, beyond the surface stuff. And so you have no influence. If you want to have influence, you've got to spend time, If you want a deep relationship with anybody, you got to spend time. It's why your mom says, call me, right? You haven't called.
That's right. Where you been?
Mom? She wants to know what's going on. She wants to know what's, the celebrations, the things that are working, the things you're struggling with, all that stuff. And that's not 5 minutes. I don't think. That hasn't been my experience.
One thing that we've been doing a lot more lately, because we travel a lot, but like we've been looking at some trips coming up too. And we're like, we're going to drive that one, even though it's a little longer than we normally like to. Yeah. And the reason a buddy of mine named Scott Beebe, I don't know if you ever met him before. He's an incredible guy. He has this thing called forced family fun. He's like, man, we're getting in a car and we're going 10 hours somewhere.
You got to make them turn the phones off though. Otherwise they've got their ear pod and they're all, it's just separate little pods in the car kind of thing. And as the driver, you're stuck all alone.
So Brian, tell me about the next book. You got a new book coming out at the end of this year, beginning of next year. What's it about, and why'd you write it?
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's you can get an advanced copy now at Barnes & Noble and Amazon and all those places. It's called Uncommon Accountability. And, if you've read the 12-week year, we've got a couple chapters in there on accountability. And we have a very different view of it. And so I think accountability is probably the most powerful concept to live the life you want to live when you really understand what it is. And so we've done a lot of work on that. We've had a lot of our readers and clients ask for more. And so we said, let's do an entire book just on that, because it's so powerful. And our view is so different. And once you understand it, again, it just opens up so many opportunities in your life to live a better life. And so Uncommon Accountability is the title. You get advanced, you can order it now. It should be out late December.
Awesome, man. I actually, when we've started the 12-week year, the second time around, I started looking for other people who were also doing it to help us be more accountable. And we also talked about ways to create accountability within the team to make sure that like we tried to tie the tactical outcome independent tasks like to each other. Does that make sense? So we could make sure that we were all supporting each other and all lifting each other. Because like at the end of the day, if it's your business, you can kind of look in the mirror and go, I'm not going to do that. Right. Yeah. So without accountability, you're just like not going to execute anything, you know?
Absolutely. And right. And we're all the CEO of our own life. So it shows up in some form or fashion in every area of your life.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, Brian, man, I really appreciate you, dude. I love the book, The 12-Week Year. I know it's made a huge impact on our business, and I cannot wait to get your new book as well. And tell everybody if they want to learn more about the 12-Week Year, learn more about accountability, where can they go to find you guys online?
Yeah, 12weekyear.com. The digits, 12weekyear.com. Best place to go. We've got everything from freebies to online programs, all the way up to individual one-on-one performance coaching. So, if we can help in any way, check us out. Happy to make a difference. That's what we're all about.
All right, y'all. That wraps up my interview with Brian Moran, the author of The 12-Week Year. What an amazing guy, man. An incredible leader. And I can give a ringing endorsement for the book and the plan itself. I think everybody should be looking at stuff like this. Everybody should be looking at this book so they can be more productive, more efficient, and they can execute at a higher level. So make sure you check out Brian over at 12-Week Year, and make sure you check out the book over at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever books are sold. And as always, thank you so much for listening to the Shane Sam Show, man. I appreciate my audience so much. I appreciate you for listening in. I love bringing you access to these amazing authors and experts and entrepreneurs every single week. I'm trying to learn from them just like you are. I've got a lot of questions that I need help with, so it's awesome that I get to meet these people and hang out with them and ask them these questions. And I love that you get to listen in so you can learn too. And if you want me to get even bigger and better guests, if you want me to keep bringing you amazing content, you can help us out by supporting the show. There's a couple ways you can do that. First, go leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Don't just hit the stars, y'all. Type me some information in there. Tell me what you love about the show. Tell me who your favorite guest was. Make sure you download those episodes to your device. That triggers that algorithm. That helps people see it and love it and will say, hey, I want to listen to this show too. And as we grow the show, you get even better guests on here to share their information with you and help you grow too. Make sure you follow and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you listen to the show on. Give this episode or another episode a share on social media. And hey, tell a friend. We live in a new school world, baby, but that old school referral word of mouth is how you grow a podcast. And as always, the Shane Sam Show is brought to you by FlippedLifestyle.com. FlippedLifestyle.com is where me and my wife, Jocelyn, help real people start, build, and grow online businesses. We help people turn what they love, what they've lived, and what they've learned into real online memberships. We teach people how to teach people, then go out and get 100 people to pay them $50 a month, make $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year, or hey, 200 people to make 120. Our goal is to make you a 6-figure membership earner so that you can make extra money or earn your entire living online. If you'd like to start, build, or grow an online business, all you have to do is head over to FlippedLifestyle.com. That's FLIPPED lifestyle.com, and you can get started for free today. All right, y'all, that's all the time I have for this week. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, whatever it is you're doing, be consistent, be prolific, be relentless. Pick your stone up, cast it out upon the waters, and cause many ripples. I'll see you next time.